What is up, everybody? Welcome here to Half-Ass Pod. It's your boy Corn. Ladies and gentlemen, over here to my left, we have the author, the creator, the end-all be-all of not only Walter Paisley Cafe, but Spadal, Mark Platt. Mark, say what's up to the people, man.
All right, people. Hope you're out there. If you're not here with us live, I'm glad you're here watching the recording. Whatever. Fun time, man. Ready to talk about this movie.
And over here at the bottom, we have your trench captain, Mr. Smith. Smith, say what's up to the people, man.
Yeah, I don't usually go by. It's just trench captain to you, okay? Like you don't.
I had to come up with something. I have to come up with something. You know how long it took me to figure out what to say for Smith.
I don't even need an introduction, really. I'm a household name.
What tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have a movie that I never thought I would love. I did not. I'm going off right off the bat and say I love this movie. Never thought I would do that. I thought I would, like it at best. Say, it's a late '80s, early '90s esque type of action movie at best, bruh. I got 5 minutes of this movie and I was like, oh, this is a different kind of movie. This is a different kind of action movie. But first, we have Mark. You're actually going to do the synopsis for The Killer, 1989, directed by John Woo and starred by Chow Yun-Fat and Danny Lee.
Yeah. So I picked this film to review, to discuss, because I think John Woo is very important to American action cinema because the peak of his career is kind of the beginning of genre that was referred to as heroic bloodshed. And the reason why it's distinguished in Hong Kong action cinema is that most Hong Kong action cinema is, you may guess it already, martial arts type films. Well, this film, the closest thing you say to martial art might embody what was later called gun fu. Okay, so after this film came out in 1989, it was the third heroic bloodshed film that John Woo did, where the first film sort of got it going. There was another director, Ringo Lam. No, not Ringo Lam. Oh, anyway, so yeah, but his films started catching on with other directors. But he did A Better Tomorrow, that was it, and then A Better Tomorrow 2, and then The Killer. The Killer is the one that hit big in the U.S. I think it made more money than Hong Kong. Hong Kong, it didn't do as well. It later sort of became sort of a cult hit there. And then, of course, here, some very influential directors like Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez, and then later we find out the Wachowskis, things like this, drew a lot of influence. They love these films. So, hell, John Wick, there would be no John Wick without John Woo.
That was my first thought too. When you see him with the hair slicked back, and you see him walking through, he's got the gun in his hand, just walk with the coat and everything. I was like, bruh, like there's no way that they didn't take a little bit of John Wick from this movie.
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of the characteristics that are John Woo trademarks are in this film. The white doves in the church, that sort of became a thing, I think, with other directors. He did it, I believe, in his next film. And then, of course, I think the most, of course, he doesn't, it's not the first movie where the actors use two handguns, but John Woo sort of turned that into an art. Of course, there's the opening scene where our hero, now mind you, now I don't know, did you guys both watch the YouTube version of this film that I sent? Okay. Yeah.
And I took your advice too. I was like, wait a minute, ain't no English. I was like, oh, that's right. Mark said just click on Chinese subtitles and it will show you the English subtitles. And that's exactly what it did.
So if anybody wants to go and see this film, It's really, I don't know, it's really hard to find on streaming. I couldn't really find it anywhere, but I found it on YouTube. You just put in The Killer 1989, it'll come up. And if you're an English speaker, hit the closed captions and click on Chinese, and you'll get English captions. So, yeah, because there's only two choices on there, off and Chinese. But and the captions aren't great. Is what I understand is that there was a DVD release that has better captions. This is not it. So
okay.
But yeah, and the movie, to start the synopsis, the movie pretty much starts with Ajong, and he is, or Ajong, and he, in the subtitles, he's referred to as Jeff, so yeah. Jeff Ajong, but I don't know. It like clearly people are calling him Ajong when you watch the movie.
Because I even put it in my notes. I was like, all right, so his name's Ajong, but he goes by Mickey Mouse and Jeff. And I was like, so those are his two names, Mickey Mouse and Jeff.
Right. So yeah, but it starts off with him. He's a assassin for organized crime. And it starts off with him in some sort of private room of a restaurant where there's a bunch of probably organized crime types of people that are rivals of his boss, Johnny Wang, I'm assuming. But it seems to be going. He's working through the liaison with Sydney. And Sydney is the no, that's the part. Okay, yeah. Chu Kong. So Chu Kong is the liaison who pretty much gives Ajong his assignments. And what's that?
In the subtitles, it had him as Sydney.
Oh, that was. Are you sure that wasn't Detective Lee's partner? Danny.
Yeah,
Lee?
yeah, never mind.
Yeah, his partner. Yeah.
The cat who died in the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it starts off with him doing a hit. And wait, was that in the jazz bar? Either way, was this the hit where the first hit was that where he shoots near Jenny, the nightclub singer's face, and blinds her from the muzzle shot? Yep. So she gets her eyes damaged. He tries to help her by wrapping a piece of her clothing around her eyes. And of course, Ajong, as we come to know, gets away, right? He always gets away. He's always backed in the corner. Bam, he gets away. But I don't think it's in a what they call the Mary Sue situation. I mean, he's not like ridiculously powerful or something like that. But he's pretty slick. His character's pretty slick. And this character, Ajong, is
what the fuck was up with Jenny this whole movie, man? That's a question that we really need to ask, man. What was her fucking deal? Like,
oh, I don't know. She just like the wilting flower or something. It just there's shriveling. Yeah. She just. I think, but I mean, she played an important part in the film in the sense, and this is another characteristic that we get out of Heroic Bloodshed, particularly from John Woo. This is the end of the 80s. So we just went through a decade where we had Arnold Schwarzenegger and Commando, Sylvester Stallone in First Blood and Rambo films. And so the hero in a lot of these films was the stoic, blank-faced, ruthless killer, especially Commando. It's like hardly anything. John Woo went a different way and brought emotion to his action heroes. I mean, all these people are badasses, but they have feelings, and they have a personal code that involves those emotions. You can look at Rambo and Commando and a few other of the key action film characters from the 80s in the US and say they have some sort of code themselves, but it's not as emotional as it plays out in this film and other Heroic Bloodshed films.
I would have to go back to, I would hope, but I agree with you too. And obviously more than I would, because I wasn't even thought of in the 80s, like I always say. But, if you go back to, the 80s and like the 90s, you started seeing more evolution between those characters, because look at what we reviewed what was it, a month or so ago? where we reviewed the Clint Eastwood movie, about basically about the man with no name, where it's Clint Eastwood, so we all know what we're going to be getting at the end of the day. Which, by the way, Cry Macho just came out last week. Still got to watch that. But he had that stone face, but yet he was still that killer. He was still that, and you put him in any situation, guess what? He got out of it. And I kind of felt that with this movie as well, except you had more depth with this character. And that's the one thing that I was not expecting with this movie. Because when you mentioned this movie, I was like, okay, obviously it's an action movie, so I'm already invested anyways. But I'm like, I'll probably like it at best, whatever. But then you watch it and you're like, wow, there's actual depth. And you didn't think that in the 80s, at least at that point in time, they wouldn't have depth with these action heroes. I mean, to me, I thought the biggest one with the most depth was probably Bruce Willis's character from Die Hard. You know what I mean?
That when I watched those,
or maybe
films,
Lethal Weapon, the two guys from Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. I don't think I saw Lethal Weapon back then. I've seen it since, but Die Hard was the first time I noticed sort of a change. There was sort of a crack in the veneer, and some emotion came through with the hero. There was something. He wasn't quite the stoic person at all. I mean, he had he had a tragic background, but he was like arguing with his wife and things like that. There was just a lot of elements that were being subverted from what went prior.
Facts. Because in the 80s, man, you had the best of the best in the 80s, but also in the 90s, you started implementing more comedy because in the 80s, Beverly Hills Cop was the 80s, right? I'm not too familiar with this movie.
Yeah, like late 80s, I believe. And
was there serious elements in those movies? Like, what did people start taking seriously as like a serious actor? Yeah. I mean, obviously he wasn't just a serious actor in those movies, but because those were action comedies as well, right? So
yeah, with his, he kind of broke out as kind of an action character, comedic action, mind you, in 48 Hours and Beverly Hills Cop. The thing that was good about those films is the stakes felt real. The characters had dimension. And Eddie Murphy was funny, but he wasn't, like some kind of sort of buffoon at all. I mean, he was witty and clever and really good with his words. He had a lot of charm. And I think that's really what worked for him. I mean, that was probably the peak of his movie career with those characters. I'm sure maybe other people can come up with movies that they think Eddie Murphy brought the same sort of energy to, and please put that down in the comments. We'd like to hear from you.
Speaking of comments, shout out to Jaron, day one. What up? He says, "Nice at corn." You already know I gotta represent my Hokies. We had a tough loss this past weekend, but we'll get past it. Shout out to Preston. He says, "Yo, what up, Preston? Yo, back." Make sure you guys hit that like, by the way. And Preston, if you haven't hit that subscribe as well. But man, look, this movie to me was definitely a movie I had to watch. I'm glad you recommended this. I had to see this. Now I want to ask you, what did you guys think about the blood? How epic was the blood?
How epic was it?
How epic was it? I mean, did you guys notice it? Like, obviously you noticed blood's there, but did you guys notice okay, this movie came out in the late 80s and we're seeing sort of kind of stuff that you would see more into the 2000s in terms of the way they and how detailed they were with how
blood packs, regular timers and everything. I mean, I don't know how they did it, but yeah, it did look pretty good. Certainly.
I like I like how detailed they were. Like remember when he took the gunpowder and poured it on the arm and then took his cigarette and I'm like they're super detailed in these in some of these scenes in this movie. I really loved it. The cinematography I loved the most, obviously. Some really, really cool shots in this movie. The first 5 minutes, like I said, where he's sitting down, where Chow Yun-Fat, he's sitting down, he's just staring. And he just has that same ruthless stare that old dude is talking about later on in the movie, where he's where he gives it to the detective gives it to the artist, And it's like,
Yeah.
make this picture come alive. And it's like, it's a guy that has this ruthless stare. And every single time I hear that line, I just go back to where he's just sitting there staring at the fucking screen. And he's just like, you're like, all right, this dude means fucking business. Like that to me was just an epic fucking scene right there. And that was only 5 minutes into the fucking movie. So I was invested from the jump. I was definitely invested from the jump.
Yeah, so Ajong, what we learned is that I think he feels some sort of guilt about blinding Jenny. She was just an innocent bystander. She continued her nightclub singing career, and he started going to see her just sitting quietly in a corner until one night he was outside. I think he was smoking a cigarette in an alley or something like that. He sees Jenny walking along, and two thugs come out and try to mug her. So Ajong comes in, and I believe he comes in, does his Ajong thing, blows the other guys away, and then that starts his friendship, and eventually the romance will come between them from there. But from there, he learns that she needs surgery, corrective surgery, to get her vision back, or at least better than what it was, and she needs a cornea transplant, and it's difficult to get one in Hong Kong. I mean, mind you, if anybody knows anything about Hong Kong, they should at least know that it's very densely populated. It's just a huge city. It's just one of those cities that just, one of the major cities. It's just an amazing place. I mean, I've never been. Have either one of you guys been to Hong Kong? Oh, okay. Well, I didn't want to start mansplaining Hong Kong, but if one of you guys already fucking knew what was going on there, like, oh, listen to Mark talk to me about Hong Kong. I was there for 4 years. So, but yeah, and then they said they had to go international. So she needed a good chunk of money. I don't know how things work. Hong Kong was at the time was a British Commonwealth. They usually have good health care, but maybe it was because they had to go international that she needed a good chunk of money. So Ajong wanted to quit the business, but he decided to take one last hit, and it was this politician named Wang. And this guy looks more like a Wang. I mean, what a dipshit. So the guy's doing a public ceremony for some kind of rowboat sort of racing. It's where they got the long rowboats with the oars, and they got a guy with a drum beating out the rhythm. It's like he looks like a huge event in Hong Kong. And then some sort of like, I don't know, honored guest will dot like the eye and then the top of the dragon's head on like one of the boats, and this is like how the ceremony begins. And Wang was doing this. Ajong is out in the water on a motorboat with a rifle, zeroing in through the scope on this guy. Kind of hesitates, and then kind of looks like he's like, "Fuck it!" Bam, shoots him right in the goddamn forehead. And then continues, because it's John Woo. You got to go over the top, Because I'm like, yeah, that guy is dead, unmistakably dead. But he pulls off 2 more shots anyway. Like, hey, this guy's got to be fucking dead. Like, yeah, I don't think there's any coming back from that. So what's that?
And when it comes to the gunfights, though, that to me is where I'm just like, because you go from one gunfight at the beginning, and you're like, oh my God, how can they fucking top that? Like, I'm sure we're going to be talking about that one scene in the review. Then you go to the next gunfight, and you're like, holy shit, that was fucking awesome. Then you go to the next gunfight, and the next, and I'm like, oh my God, until you get to the very end, and you got that church scene. And I gotta say, man, dude, that church scene, I hate to just mention that last scene right off the bat, but goddamn, that scene was awesome. And I knew, I don't want to say I knew he was going to die, but I had a feeling that, Ajong was going to die, but I didn't think he was going to die at that very part, like where he got shot, where old dude was holding Jenny, and then he shoots him, and then the way he dies, which again, we'll get to that too, because I was a little, apparently that's poetic. I'm still trying to figure out how, but whatever. Yeah, I don't know,
It's very
but
tragic. At least I would say
yeah,
that
yeah.
at the very
I
least.
mean, it was
Very
tragic.
tragic ending. Yeah.
Yeah, but that church scene, man, where like just all the dialogue, and this is one thing I feel like movies nowadays should be able to take away from movies like this, where there's no extra. If you really watch and break that entire church scene down, there's no extra dialogue at all. It's
Yeah.
everything that was said was important to the story and important to character development. Like
Mhm.
there was no, and I'm not saying they didn't have to be silly or they couldn't be silly or anything like that, but there were some real funny moments in this movie, but while also having that serious demeanor as well. And that's what really made me fuck with this movie a lot was the
Well,
fact that
I like
go
that
ahead.
you bring that up because what you just described about the movie, where John Woo is famous for going over the top, but when you said about the dialogue in the end scene, there's more subtlety there. There's a little bit more,
Me,
implications there. So there's like a interesting contrast. So I mean, it shows his range where he can go from doing over the top action to being able to give us information without throwing a bunch of dialogue in it.
yeah, I mean because if you go back to the conversations that they have with or that they have with between Lee and Ajong, it's great. Like it's all fucking great because it's not like you're sitting there and you're waiting for them to finally meet and have a conversation because they met before early in the movie. Like they crossed paths a little bit in the movie, but once they have that sit down outside where he's nursing the
Mm,
wound, it's just like we've waited for this moment pretty much halfway through the movie. I mean, you got halfway through the movie at that point. Like we
right.
pretty much waited for that one moment to happen. We waited for these two to cross paths again, and then they did. And obviously, we get the story that we have.
Well,
But
yeah, I
then
think
once that end where they've stuck together, and now they're having this dialogue of what happens. What happens if I die? What happens if are you my friend? Do I have friends? Am I a sociopath? Am I a fucking idiot? I don't know. You have like all these weird conversations, but it's all staying true to their characters, and you're still learning more about what that character is like. Does
yeah.
does he have as much emotion as we think he does, or does he have as little emotion as we think he does? So like that whole scene explained pretty much it answered all of our questions almost.
Yeah, because the turning point for that led up to that was, after the boat chase, Ajong gets on land, and then he finds himself uh, being mixed in with gunfire from Johnny. What is it? Johnny. His boss. Yeah, Johnny Wang. Johnny
Hmm.
Wang's people are coming after him, and then the police show up, led by Lee, and there's all this gunfire, and there was a little girl involved, and so somehow she gets hurt, and Ajong rushes her into a car, rushes her to a hospital. He's got cops all over the place, holding guns on each other, but Ajong will not leave until he knows that little girl's okay. And then he makes his grand escape like he does, And then
Right.
Lee sort of sees that he becomes kind of obsessed with it. That there was something like he felt there was a dimension to this person that he never saw in any sort of cold-blooded killer before. There was something about that scene where, and then that's where I think he started to be able to relate to him, because as they go further in the film, as they interact, the more they learn, the more they have in common, and of course, the ironic being on opposite sides of the law, sort of with similar codes, and then of course we get the later what becomes the friendship.
Was that a rare thing back in? I feel like that was a rare thing. That was still a rare story told back in the day. Was like
Well,
copping because I felt like that was really overdone in the '90s. You know
mm,
what I mean? When you saw like the bulletproofs of the world, which don't get me wrong, Adam Sandler and Damon Wayans in a movie together, cool. But I don't know. It's just once you got past that point, you started getting to like cop goes to turn. And once we got to the was it Walking Tall, or which one was it where it was like Sean William Scott and The Rock, and they had that movie. What was that the run? It was either the Rundown or Walking Tall.
Sounds like it will be. I
Or
don't know.
one of
It could
those
be
two
one.
movies. But that's when I thought that what you're talking about, which is like the opposite ends of the law come together and they team up together and whatever. Like I felt like that's when it kind of got overdone. But in the
Well,
late '80s, was that a rare thing?
I don't know. I don't. It wasn't. I don't know because the one prior example that I can think of that I know for sure is an episode of the original Star Trek back in the '60s. Um, it's the Enterprise's encounter with a Romulan warbird, and somehow they had some way of like a spy camera that they could use to see inside the ship. So they watch this guy interact with them as they do this battle. And I think it has something to do with being in the neutral zone or something like that. But the Romulans had never been seen before because they had a war with the Romulans before, but for some reason they didn't have visuals. That doesn't make sense now, but whatever. It did to Gene Roddenberry back then. But either way, so throughout the episode, Captain Kirk keeps going, oh, that's what I would do, and things like that. So they don't. I don't know if they actually meet in real life, but they do start to communicate, and then they start to gain this respect for each other. And I would be willing to bet that there's a Western that's like that. I may have even seen it. I just can't remember it now, but there were a lot of Westerns. So yeah.
Cowboys and Aliens. Don't the Indians team up?
Oh,
Really?
damn.
Same thing.
I missed that one. I remember when it came out. I specifically remember when that movie came out. I missed that one.
You didn't watch it?
I didn't see it. I should have.
It's fine. It's nothing crazy, it's worth watching, but like it's whatever.
Okay, so it's worth watching. Okay, I gotta see it.
And who knows? There might have been, what's his name? Akira Kurosawa film like that. I don't know, but yeah. So this is not an unheard of theme at this point. But if filmmakers were doing a lot more afterward, it wouldn't surprise me because, like I said, John Woo just really had this impact. Of course, because after that scene, the next time that Ah Jung and Lee encounter each other, it's at Jenny's apartment. And they start having this Mexican standoff, and that's the first of like many Mexican standoffs that Lee and Ah Jung will have, even in the scene alone. And and they're talking around Jenny because it's obvious that Ah Jung does not want to upset Jenny, and Lee just starts going along with it. And that's when they start calling each other by the nicknames.
Yep.
So, what's that?
And what weird nicknames to give them to though? That was the funny thing about it. I was just like,
you couldn't get away with that today, right? That I have to pay like fucking royalties or something.
Would they?
Yeah, that also might have been. That might have also been because actually in the movie they don't call each other like the translation was it was in the subtitles because apparently from what I read is that they called each other Mickey Mouse and Dumbo, and probably most of all the different versions I've seen with the captions have always been Mickey Mouse and Dumbo, but for the reason Hartao, which means shrimp head. That's like a roughly translated. And then Ah Jung calls Lee Abi, which is baby or kid. So yeah, the whole Mickey Mouse Dumbo thing purely in the translations. And I don't know. It's
so do you think maybe maybe that was done? I don't know. That's weird though. That's weird that they would do that on purpose for all the translations too, to say that Mickey Mouse and Dumbo. That's
I
weird.
guess in some time
That's
translations they were. What's that, Smith?
For a wider audience, I don't think like if they were calling each other shrimp heads, it wouldn't mean too much to me, you know, or most Americans.
Facts.
And the English from I guess some of the translations they were calling each other butthead and numbnuts. So I don't know.
That would be good. That's more relatable though.
Yeah.
That's more.
I thought the
American.
Dumbo and Mickey Mouse thing was like off because like it's too long, and then the name he was calling was very short, and then he would say Mickey Mouse in the subtitles, and like it just doesn't.
It's just very soft too, though. That's like calling somebody a poo-poo head or something. It's just like, that's just a weird flex. Like it's not even like an insult. Like, it's just weird.
Well, I don't know. Shrimp head might have been really profound in Hong Kong at the time. Like, oh, burn, sick burn.
Well, yeah. One thing I've noticed though was at the end of this movie, there's a lot of flashbacks, right? At like the last like 5 minutes of this movie, they keep flashing back to earlier, and they even flash back to earlier when they had that conversation by that lake or whatever when he was nursing the arm. So Ah Jong says to Lee, he says, "You're an unusual cop." Now, I love when movies do this. I don't even say movies. I love when just film in general, show, whatever, does this. Is when you do a callback to something that we weren't necessarily supposed to be paying attention to. And that's what I like about it. Like, it's not too deep to where it's like, oh, we weren't paying attention, so we didn't get it. No, but to where like you relatively remember them saying it, but it just wasn't. It didn't stand out. And this was a perfect example, at least to me. Was you hearing him? He says, "You're an unusual cop." You know what I mean? It's like, you're here making friends with me. I'm a hitman. You're, whatever. And then we get to the very end of the fucking movie, and an old dude that kills Ah Jong is on the ground, and he's saying, "Look, take me to jail. I don't want to die, blah, 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 whatever." And they do that flashback. They do that fucking flashback where he says, "You're an unusual cop." And you see him, you can see it on his face where he's walking. You see the fire behind, again, cinematography. You see the fire behind, and he's walking, and he's just so over it, man. He's like tired. He's just completely drained. He's like, "Fuck this." I have to end this. Like, and then as soon as they have that flashback and it goes back to his face, like you can clearly see where he's thinking about that very moment where it's like, do I shoot him or do I not shoot him? But he's still walking. He doesn't stop. That's what I love about it. Like, you can tell in his face he's still thinking about it, but he's still walking towards him. And then he shoots him. Look, man. I would say you can't make this up, but it's just made up. But
well, I thought that scene with him shooting him at the end, Lee shooting Wang at the end, was very American influenced. I mean, Hong Kong, it was a Commonwealth of Britain. It wasn't part of, People's Republic of China at the time. So yeah, there was a lot of crossover there, and Wu admitted that this particular film was influenced by Mean Streets by Martin Scorsese. In fact, I think at one point he said it was like kind of like a tribute to Martin Scorsese. I don't recall that much, but what I do recall is there was a film back in the 80s called 10 to Midnight, and the protagonist, the main hero, was Charles Bronson. And spoiler alert, he pretty much kind of does the same thing at the end, because he's tracking down a serial killer, and this guy's really clever. He always kills the women. Of course, it's got to be women, and he always kills the women completely naked, and he does everything he can to leave no trace. So I don't know, but at the end he's like, "Oh, whatever, that's the way things are. I'm just gonna be arrested, but I'm gonna, I'm gonna be let out. I'm gonna be go through the system, blah blah blah." And then Charles Bronson holds up his handgun says, "No, you won't," in this stoic Charles Bronson-y way. Shoots him right in the forehead. So sorry if I blew 10 to midnight for you, even if you ever even fucking heard of it.
Spoiler alert. 50
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah, I saw that in a double feature theater that showed 2 second run films for $1.
I wish we go back to those days.
But yeah. I mean, basically, the plot point in my synopsis, I think that we should at least address is that Johnny Wang puts a hit out on Ajong with a guy that's named what's his name? Sheng Fon. No, is that? Uh, I don't know, but I know this guy. Yeah, Frank Chen. So he hires this kind of slick, hot assassin named Frank Chen to kill Ajong. The reason why is because Ajong was spotted at the hit of that mustache dude that I mistakenly called Wang, but whatever, the doofus, and so he was spotted by the cops and everything. So he was considered a liability. So I think in a way later on, Lee and Ajong kind of have a common enemy with Frank Chen and of course Johnny Wang, the triad boss. And that's another thing that brings them together.
How did you guys feel about let me see if I can get his name right. It's been like over a week since I watched this movie. I'm just trying to remember his name. But the detective that died in the end, the old dude's friend, Ah Jong's friend. What was his name?
Sydney?
That was Sydney, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when Sydney died, and you kept going back to, I don't even know if you would even call this a metaphor, but they kept going back to it as, am I a dog? Am I a dog or am I human? I thought that was well done. I still didn't really understand what they were trying, the picture they were trying to paint with that, but I kind of felt it a little bit. It was still a little bit emotional. I felt, with him dying, especially the way he died. Like he was like, I don't deserve to die as a dog, but yet he died from gun wounds. Like he was shot to death. He was killed. But I want to know you guys' thoughts. Like, how did you guys feel about that?
Well, it was definitely better than than Lee's partner dying. That was sort of underwhelming. And I think you're right with the dog thing. Although that whole scene, it doesn't paint a very clear picture about like what he was in so much anguish about. Like, okay, yeah, like why are you so hurt, dude? I mean, he already told you that like he forgave you or whatever.
And he's still asking the question. He's like, "Do I deserve to die? Like, am I a dog? Do I deserve?" And I'm just like,
it might be like a lost in cultural translation because honor, I think that's what you chalk it up to because he begged him, he begged his boss.
Facts.
But I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I know. Like,
still a good scene though. You still feel when you're watching that. It's just like,
like you can feel the emotion. It's hard to understand. You know what I mean?
All right, I was cutting out there. Which scene were you talking about without going over the details?
We're talking about Sydney dying in Ah Jong's arms, right?
Oh, okay, all right,
and he's asking, am I a dog or am I a human? And then he goes on to say, do I deserve to die like this? Do I deserve to die like a dog? Do I deserve to die as a dog? And it was one of those weird flex but okay moments. You know what I mean? It was just like, I feel you, but where are you getting at? We got about 50 guys coming in here in about 30 seconds. You kind of tell us what you're saying.
I do have to wonder though how much of that may be cultural to Hong Kong, China, or specifically John Woo, because he's definitely doing something different here. Also, he's a Christian. However, he's I don't know. He's not a Christian in the way Americans are. He kind of describes Jesus as someone that he had deep respect for, and as a philosopher. But I think he's definitely going on that too, with bringing sort of the emotion in. And of course, we got the religious imagery. But if we can assume how Christian he is, I mean, there's one scene where we clearly blows up a statue of Mary. Just very intense. Boom! It was a great explosion. So he probably doesn't have this sense of the sort of sacred idolatry or whatever. Of course, but at the same time, he loves using the imagery because he is. I mean, of course, Ajong tells the liaison, his friend, at the beginning. He asks him, "Oh, do you believe in God?" And Ajong says, "Well, no, but I love the tranquility here." And I think that just sort of sets it just sets it up for the everything about the church that we see, because we say it often. I mean, the church is we got this little fantasy aspect. I mean, I don't know. I've never been in a church where there was a bunch of white doves flying around, no. Freely, and with no bird shit all over the place either. Amazing. So, but it definitely served a purpose in setting mood and everything like that. And I think that lends to the emotion aspects of the film. I mean, I think a lot of that really was just John Woo kind of trying to subvert, sort of some of the standard tropes that had been set up for action films up until this time.
That's facts. Because, look, every time I think about what could John Woo have done better in this movie, I'm out of options. I don't know.
Okay, I've got one.
And going back to that scene where you're talking about where they blew up the statue of Mary, right? Look at that shot. Let me know, and obviously we wouldn't know off the top of our heads, but let me know if we've seen anything as close to that shot where the statue blows up and it hits the camera. Like, if you guys notice, when the statue blew up, a piece of that statue, he actually hit the camera. That was cool. Because we see stuff like that nowadays, but if you go back, hell, even 10, 15 years ago, you still weren't seeing shots like that.
One question I would have for anybody watching this, and hopefully they can write in the comments, is because to me, I would assume, unless they had a bunch of exact statues, that they would have had to have done that in one shot.
Well, just like Keanu Reeves with the Matrix pillar, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Wait, I don't know. You have to refresh. This was the first one, right?
Yeah, so he's behind that pillar and it's getting shot all the way whittled down by bullets, and it's $1 million to set one of those off, and he trips the first take.
Oh no shit! Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know, but that shot didn't look too hard to pull off, because no one was near it, and I don't know if the piece hitting the camera was intentional or not. Do you know, Mark?
No, I don't know, but I think
that happened, and they just got lucky, because that's the only thing you see like that in film. So I think they're let's leave it in, just see how it goes, and yeah, it's definitely a cool shot.
Yeah, because it's not like it's a building blowing up and we see a piece hit the TV. You know what I mean? Hit the camera, because that obviously would be orchestrated. But that statue, I mean, you're probably right, man. And I would like to know, if that was super, just, hey, that just so happened to be, that is fucking awesome. That's fucking awesome.
Now, does it look? I don't know. What do you think? Does it look like the actual camera was hit, or was it a blast shield hit? Because I don't know. The thing about it is safety standards and laws for films were a lot different in Hong Kong than the U.S. This is one of the main problems that John Woo later had when he emigrated to the U.S. In 1993. I think it was just to because Hong Kong was being handed over from the British to the People's Republic of China, and I think he just didn't want to be around. But or either that, or I don't know, he got a lot of money offered to him to do movies in the U.S. But but
I don't
yeah,
know.
but I just have to wonder about it. Yeah, if it was a blast shield or what. I mean, I think they had some safety. I mean, of course, I'm a big fan of Jackie Chan's Hong Kong films. And have you seen any of those like Rumble in the Bronx or Super Cop? Those
I saw
were
Super Cop
released.
as a kid.
Yeah. And a lot of his films at the end credits, he puts like fuck ups in the from the film, like him getting injured and stunts going wrong and shit like that. And it was so bad that his insurance company dropped him. They didn't want to they didn't want to handle him anymore. So yeah, all of his injuries afterward came out of his goddamn pocket, or the budget of the movie or whatever. But yeah, if you can go back and see Jackie Chan's Hong Kong films, I mean, those are great films, mind you. But the fuck ups at the bloopers at the end, I mean, that's could be the price of admission alone,
Facts. And just on a side note, I miss Jackie Chan, man. You know the last movie I saw Jackie Chan in?
Why?
Karate Kid.
Oh, okay.
I'm not ashamed to say it wasn't a bad movie. It wasn't great. It wasn't a bad movie. But that's a conversation for another time. That's a whole rabbit hole in itself. But I want to get you guys' thought on this movie overall. So I kind of gathered a little bit of my ideas of because I wanted to grade this movie fairly. I didn't want to just sit here and just be like, oh, action, gunfight. I gotta look at the story too. Gotta look at the characters, character development. Not many flaws in this movie. It's for a movie that came out in 1989. I mean, is it fair for us to even put in, like, factor in the year or the time frame? I mean, that's fair, right? To factor in, like, the era that the movie came out in.
I think a lot of it has to do with the time it came out. I think that it hasn't lost anything given the time, but in a lot of ways it's very much a film of the times. I keep bringing up the Hong Kong handover and things like this, and then the tropes of the action films of the 80s and the way they were being subverted by John Woo. Now, mind you, of course, he wasn't the only one. I mean, there were Americans started to do that. We mentioned them in Die Hard and even the movie Speed. I mean, while Keanu Reeves was stoic in that movie, he did express some frustration that I don't recall ever seeing, like Rambo doing. Like, I don't remember Rambo being like, "Oh fuck," or something like that. But Keanu did it in Speed, despite his otherwise stoic demeanor. But yeah, John Woo was definitely doing a lot of subversion there.
That's a nice comparison. That's a nice comparison. But yeah, so I'm gonna ask you guys your grades on The Killer 1989. Smith, I'll start with you.
Well, I'm glad you said 1989 because I watched the 2008 version. It is not related. It's just called The Killer. It's a Bollywood film. It's pretty terrible. I paid $4 for it before I found out. I was like, this doesn't. Why would Mark recommend this? It's like a comedy, and they're not even speaking. Yeah, so I went back, found the right one. Don't waste your time with the 2008 Killers.
Oops, sorry if I wasn't clear in my message.
Well, I just typed it in. That's what came up, and I was like, well, this must be it. So.
Yeah, it was a prank.
But ultimately, I wasn't thinking about it while I was watching it, but yeah, it's very or John Wick is very The Killer-esque. The only difference would be that John Wick actually has a soundtrack. I don't know if you guys noticed this. It didn't have, like, there was maybe one piano, a soft piano thing subtly in one part, and then there was the song that the girl sang. That's like the two songs in the whole film, I think.
Oh yeah,
But there's still somewhat of a score, right? I mean, they keep
I don't.
playing like that same like fucking
Actually,
theme throughout the.
it's funny that you
But there's
bring
no
that
like
up because
real.
Choi Huck, whom we discussed in the Vampire Hunters,
Mhm.
who was the director of that film, his production company was handling this film initially, and there was like a lot of tension between John Woo and uh, um, and Choi Huck, and eventually I think Jimmy Lee and Chow Yun-Fat had to step in and start providing funding, for the film because him and Choi Huck were having a lot of tension. And one of the things that they fought each other about was the music. Uh, yeah,
Okay.
because John Woo wanted her to be like a jazz singer and not the like sort of mushy sort of, I guess from what I've read, it's like kind of typical mushy, slow, poppy type music that it was, was really popular in Hong Kong. So
Mhm.
Choi Huck was just like, oh, this jazz, Hong Kong people won't get it, fuck this, So I guess they fought over it, and John Woo lost, so he had to go with that.
Wow. Wow. So John Woo didn't get to use the. I'd be pissed. I'd be pissed.
But even outside of that, like the gunfights, it's just gunshots. Like that's all you hear. Which I mean, it didn't take away from it, but it is looking back at it, it's kind of jarring when you're used to films of today.
Would you
Um,
say it's anticlimactic?
I would like if they had done something like heart wrenching when Sydney died, and it may have made it better. I don't know. A lot of great shots in this film, though. The pigeon going over the flames and like putting him out with its wings. I don't know how they did that, but it looked pretty awesome. It was like a brief thing in the church thing. But I would give this a B minus, not a B minus. My mistake. A minus. Yeah.
Word. So Smith gives the killer A minus. So Mark, I'm gonna throw it over to you. What do
All
you
right.
give this?
Well, as I said before, I chose this film uh, mostly because I think when you're looking at film history, even from a Hollywood USA perspective, uh, John Woo was such a great influence, and The Killer did it. Now, mind you, he had another movie with Chow Yun-Fat as a star. He played a like an
Hard
undercover
boiled, right?
copper. Yeah, Hard Boiled. Now that is probably my absolute favorite John Woo film. I mean that is one that's just amazing through and through. And at least in this film, jazz definitely takes a prominent position in the film as the lead character played by Chow Yun-Fat. I forgot his name, but he plays clarinet with a jazz combo, and that's how the film starts. So yeah, like, hey, fuck you, Choi Huck, because he was completely divorced from Choi Huck's production company at that point. So I mean, I think that's like a masterpiece. So so yeah, but the killer, just amazing beats. The only mistake that I mean, the kind of funny. These are just silly things. The one thing I had to read the trivia on it, but when he takes the little girl to the hospital, it's Scared Heart Hospital. Instead, obviously, would have been Sacred Hospital. So I thought that was kind of. And then there's a scene that I can't figure out because I read about in the trivia, but Johnny Wang in the parking garage gets his arm shot off by Ajo. And like you can clearly see him getting shot in the arm, and his arm drops to the ground. There's nothing ambiguous about it. But the next scene, Johnny Wang has his arm. He's holding it in the same place. But I'm like, are we supposed to assume that he put it back on? What is going on there? I don't
Hey,
know.
here's some ice.
I would, honestly, this might be pretty nerdy of me, but I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall because John Woo said something like, "Oh yeah, I was having difficulties with the editing, blah blah blah." And I'm like, what was going on in the editing room that you missed that? I mean, there aren't, and it was a good shot. I mean, that was really cool when he got his arm shot off. But
And then
the next scene blew it. Okay, but yeah. So, but that isn't necessarily influencing mine, because the thing about it is I would go with an A- as well, because I've seen John Woo at his best. That was hard boiled. That I would give an A+, because he was still finding his groove, which unfortunately he wasn't really able to do much after that, because he moved to the U.S. the next year. We got Hard Target and Broken Arrow and Wind Talker, all these movies, which I'm not saying these aren't enjoyable films. I mean, John Woo is a master, but they pale in comparison. I mean, he was just in his element in Hong Kong at the time. I mean, he eventually went back to Asia and made films. I haven't seen those films, but yeah. But either way, the USA just didn't really work out for him.
I'm surprised. I am honestly surprised you gave this an A-, Mark. Color me shocked, because
I had to think a lot about it, though. I mean, I saw this movie twice last week, and then we postponed, and I watched about 3/4 of it today. So yeah,
my brothers watched the whole movie and get an A.
So yeah, and that's the thing. So there's just I don't know. It's impossible for me, because I've seen both of these movies several times, and I've always liked Hard Boiled better each time. So yeah.
So my grade, my grade is going to consist of a couple of things, or it's going to conflict of a couple of things. So we got Gun Fu, right? We got introduced to Gun Fu. The action was amazing. The blood obviously was epic. I love the detail that they put into, like, just the different kinds of things. Again, one of my favorite scenes is just the fact that dude takes gunpowder, puts it on the wound, and then takes a cigarette, and then something as simple as that is one of my favorite scenes in an action movie of all things. You know what I mean? And the action was still fucking top notch, especially for any movie I've seen from the 80s and early 90s. And the fact that I learned that this was a movie that came from an incomplete script as well, correct? Right? Like, this was off an incomplete script.
Yeah, he
and
pitched
still managed
it.
to do this.
He pitched it when he, I don't know. I think he didn't even have the first draft. So, but
crazy. And then you get into like the first minute of this movie, and I'm just like, oh man, what the fuck, man? 2 hours of this, I don't know. But you get to like minute number 3, and it's like, oh my god, well, we're in for a ride for the next 2 hours. I'm ready. And like the movie, it starts in a church, it ends at least at a church, in that area of a church. And again, like what Smith pointed out too, that I forgot even happened until until now, which is where the dove flies over a few of those candles, those front candles, and it goes out. Like, I mean, dude, and just like the scenery, all that stuff. Like, I'm gonna have to give this movie an A. I'm gonna have to give this movie an A, a solid A. I mean, dude, you get pictures like this, like this, and like this. I mean, come on, man, man. This was everything I wanted, especially that action scene where they're in the church and they're switching off and handing each other guns. Bro, like I was in my room and I was like laying in bed watching. I was like, I had to get up. I was like, what the fuck? Like the way they're just the transition of just handing the guns off with each other and then shooting them. And then how he took the gun, which, I mean, we kind of saw that coming in the end where he took the gun, but it was too late, where he took Lee's gun that was in his pants and then went and shot old dude. And dude still, yeah. Anyways.
I guess
the one thing that would have made this an A+ for me is if the ending, if they just would have connected just and again, this is just me nitpicking, obviously. This is just a small little tweak. But kind of give him more of a memorable, I wouldn't say memorable death, but a better death. I feel like. I feel like, the whole, him being shot and then like the eyes, like I don't know. Just a more memorable death. Just more memorable death. But again,
Yeah,
you want to talk about emotional scenes, and emotional moments. I mean, again, it one that kind of would have stuck with me more would have been that death of Sydney, because again he said, I don't want to die as a dog, and he still had to get like his Ah Jong shot him. Ah Jong shot him. Like, to me, that's crazy, man. That's crazy. So this movie definitely gets a solid A from me, because from minute number 3 of the movie to the very last minute of the movie, I was pleased with it. I'm very, very pleased with
well, yeah. In my defense, I think what sort of drew me away from a solid A. I think some of like with Ajong and Jenny. I don't know. I mean I appreciate. It's kind of funny because this film is often like referred to as homoerotic because of the what's going on between Lee and Ajong, and I'm like, I don't know. I didn't, if they mean homoerotic by something sexual, I don't know. I didn't see it. I mean, this movie didn't have much sex, but these were critiques that Americans
it. The
had.
one thing
So I don't
actually was
know.
missing is tits.
Yeah, and America just, it's got to heal itself about what it feels about sex and gender and things like that. So I don't know, and I think sometimes you can look at other, like, yeah, it's just a strong friendship, but yeah, so those aspects, sort of the bromance, if you will, was definitely strong. And yeah, with Jenny, I mean, she does take she serves something of a purpose, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There might have been a little. I didn't want them necessarily to come too well because I think the bromance was more important than the romance. But yeah, there was something about it, and there was something about Jenny just being that sort of like the wilting flower type of thing that was just a little too, like I understand he's dramatic and everything, but I don't know, maybe a little bit more substance because like this movie was a lot of style, but I will argue that it's not lacking in substance. It isn't, the style doesn't take away from the substance. And so yeah, just there was something about the whole interaction between the sort of the romance between Jaja. I'm like, well, that's kind of, I don't know, there's something about it that just doesn't quite click with me. So, but that's one of my major beefs.
But I also saw a lot of future Tarantino in this movie as well. You see a lot of, like you said, we mentioned a million times, during this review, is John Wick. That was, to me, that is the most standout part of this, of his character, of Ah John's character, is, wow, you see a lot of, I guess you could say, you see a lot of Ah Jong in John Wick or whatever. But like you said, it wasn't just um Ah Jong. You had those stoic characters, but Ah Jong brought a newer, a more of an element, just another dimension of being a stoic character. And I guess at that point you couldn't even call him. I mean, would we call Ah Jong stoic?
uh no, not completely. I mean, he has his
Yeah,
stoic
like,
moments.
yeah, not completely stoic. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I think John Wick it was a little bit more stoic than Ajong, but it has been a while since I've seen those movies. But I just remember as him being mostly stoic.
Look, man, this movie, it hit. And one thing I'm glad they didn't do is make a sequel. Now they are talking about doing a remake or reboot, whatever they want to call it. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. I'll probably have to make my own video about if it's actually true. But I really hope they don't do any kind of remake to this movie, because they haven't up to this point, correct? Like, I
No,
think some movies don't need to be touched. I mean,
yeah, I don't know.
Citizen Kane does not need to be touched, even though I have my grudge with Citizen Kane. But anyways, but people call that the greatest movie of all time, right? Or the perfect movie or whatever, right? Forrest Gump does not need to be touched. Lion King did not need to be touched. And I feel like this movie, The Killer, should not be touched. Period.
No. Well, the thing about The Killer being a remake, it's like, Okay, now honestly, I was kind of shocked to find out that it made as much money as it did in the United States because when I learned about these films, nobody I knew anything about John Woo. You know, mind you, I'm living through this. This is, you know, at the time. This isn't like, you know, a retro thing for me. I mean, so I mean, you know, I learned about him through Quentin Tarantino, but either way, um, yeah. So, but I met population, so maybe I just have lived in too much of a dork town to really see, you know, like because of course it was like a critic's darling here and everything. So it must have killed in like New York and L.A. and other big cities, you know, like that.
How much did it make in the U.S.? Do you know off the top of your head?
No, I don't. The only thing I can remember off the top of my head is like I don't know. It made like $18,000 in Hong Kong money in Hong Kong, which is pretty dismal. It didn't do well in the box office in Hong Kong, so I don't
How
think.
much is 18,000 like with inflation and all that?
Yeah, I don't know.
89 in Hong Kong money, so you have to account for inflation and transfer it to USD.
Yeah.
Right.
You're asking too much.
But before I forget, you
Nobody give
mentioned
it
we keep mentioning Quentin Tarantino. You guys see Jackie Brown?
Yeah.
Now, when Sam Jackson is pitching guns to someone, he's like, "Yeah, that's what everybody wants to be, the killer." That's what he was talking about. That movie, the movie we're reviewing right now. That was the reference, you know. But I think when I was watching it with some friends, you know, oh yeah, the killer. You know, they're like, "What? I don't know. What are you talking about, Mark?" Like, you know, like I was the dork that like introduced all this shit to everybody. Like, you know, like all this kind of different music, different kind of movies. I was always the first to have to learn about them. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you brought this movie to our attention. I really am, because this is a movie that I will never forget. This is a movie that's definitely where I will come back to, probably throughout the years, and just you know, on a rainy day and say, look, man, I want to sit back and watch a good old classic action movie. Yeah, you got some Bruce Lee movies. Yeah, you got Action Jackson, you know, your Lethal Weapons, your Die Hards, you know, all your good old fashioned action movies, but you also got the killer. And this movie was just on a whole nother level, and it told a story. And to me, it's a movie that was more of a poetic action movie than anything, and
It
that's
was
why I really
art, man. It was
that's why I
art,
really,
or it is
most
art.
definitely. But any last words on the killer from 1989?
You don't have anything, Smith?
I mean,
We dominated this one.
I didn't get to say too much about that ending there, where it was like she was crawling around, and they like barely miss her. They miss each other, and I was like, I mean that would have been extremely tragic, and it would have been a good shot, but it just looked like so stupid. Like,
I felt like it
why
did
don't
look
you
poorly
say
done.
something, dude? You're right next to her.
It did look poorly done. It literally looked like it was like a comedy at that point, where it was
Yeah.
like literally you got.
So maybe a remake would be good.
I don't know, man, because that remake might be a comedy, you know, a romantic comedy at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You know, it's like the only person I can think of that would do it justice maybe is Quentin Tarantino or Robert Rodriguez. They are the people that were the fans, or the Wachowskis, whatever. The people that were bringing that to their movies. You know, making the tributes and gaining the influence.
Quentin Tarantino, I know he would do like a 3-hour version of a remake. The question is how good. Because
Well, yeah.
Kill Bill Volume 1 was really good, but Volume 2, I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
But yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to look more into this Killers remake. because I've already heard some rumblings about it, and you know. But anyways, you guys, thank you guys for watching us here with this review of The Killer 1989, directed by John Woo and starring Chow Yun-Fat. And make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. By the way, obviously show some love to us. Come on now, guys. Uh, but without further ado, it's your boy Corn. It's your boy Smith. And over here we got Mark Platt. And Mark, where can people find you, by the way?
All right. Well, my main space on the internet for talking about movies is the WalterPaisleyCafe.com. You can find me on social media under the name the Walter Paisley Cafe with Twitter. I think it's Walt Paisley Cafe at Twitter, and at Instagram as well, and Facebook. Because I am 51, so yeah, I'm on Facebook. I mean, I even did MySpace, so there's that.
So, were you there for Zanga?
Oh no, I don't even know what the hell that is.
Oh, that was before MySpace. That was like the beginning of the beginning.
No, I missed that. I mean, I was just having regular access to a computer about the time MySpace came out.
Oh, I was about to say, I was like, we're here for the AOL days.
Yeah. All I know is I used to get a shitload of those fucking free CD, those discs that fucking AOL would send out. There was a show, an art show here in Toledo, that the Toledo Art Museum does every year for local artists. And there was a guy that made I would say maybe a 10-foot long by 3-foot high fish, and the scales of the fish were AOL discs.
No way.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, and that definitely makes a statement about how many goddamn discs those people would send out.
I am dead.
All right. And I am also an artist. I do business under the name Spidau. I put the name in the my little name tag there. So you can see right there, it says CHPIDAUU. And you can find me on Instagram as Spidau, and you can find me on Twitter and Facebook. I also have print-on-demand shops. So if you go there, hey man, help my sales. Look at my art. I'm on tpublic.com. The link should be down in the notes. And Redbubble. I started a Society 6 account, but I've only got 3 designs up there. But yeah, come on, check me out. Just give me a look. If you go to Redbubble, please, just if you don't want to spend the money, just give me some likes. That would work out great for me. Give me some good. Tap that little heart button. If you really like it, whatever. I mean, it's not going to take food out of your baby's mouth to do that. So give somebody some help out there. All right, thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Yeah, make sure I head over there, and the links are already down below. I think the only link I'm missing is the TeePublic, and I'll get that from you here in a minute, Mark. But all the other links are down there below, including the Redbubble. So make sure you guys head over there, support your boys. At least give us a follow, give us some likes, whatever you guys want to do. But thank you guys for hitting us up, coming through here, checking out the review. It's me. I'm Corn. This is Smith. This is Mark. We're the Half-Ass Pod Film Panel, ladies and gentlemen. And we are OUT.